And then this is the language.
What you have to do with all instruments is let them sing, let them be. Don't.
Gina, remind us what's happened over there.
I just did. So this morning they did a blockade on a tripod and they blockaded. And then when the truck came with the rig on it, they got that too. So they've now got that captive, so we can't get any work done now.
And, yeah, give us a few words on the day, why it's quiet and there's no traffic. How's it going?
It's wonderful. It's a good turnout, great turnout, lovely food, gorgeous sunshine. Bit windy for me. Well, I like the wind because it makes it cooler, but it's difficult with this umbrella. I haven't got the right cooling system.
How does it feel, Anne, knowing that all these people have turned out to come and see you?
They haven't come out to see me.
Of course they have. They watched your video and they thought, I'm going to go and meet Anne. I've just seen you chatting to them for 20 minutes.
Yeah,
they're all here for you, Anne.
They're lovely Green Party activists, people who've been elected and work like the devil to illustrate what the Green Party is capable of.
I'm absolutely delighted to kind of be your host here this morning on behalf of both the Green Party and local people in the area, and I just want to say thank you so much all for coming, and what a fantastic turnout on this, the first day of Green Week. So, as some of you will know, we had some bad news. This whole thing has been bad news, one thing after another, from the very first day that we heard that the fracking industry wanted to set up in Lancashire. And other people will tell you more about that story at any time if you want to know how the local community, backed by people like you, have fought this industry from the very beginning. And so far we have done so well, and today is just another one of a huge significant step in that battle. But 10 days ago we had some particularly bad news when this industry, this company specifically, went to court to see whether they could actually stop us from protesting. And we have had advice that nobody can actually stop us from protesting. And so it's a real testament to your resilience that you are here today despite this company's attempt to really bully and frighten and scare us off. We do have a right to legally protest, and we are here to maintain that right today. And so well done to all of you. I just want to say something, because this is Green Week, and anyone is welcome, Green Party members or not, but as a long-standing Green Party member, I just wanted to say a little bit about my personal reasons about why I joined the Green Party and sort of why I'm here, because I never would have imagined that I'd be in this position. I actually my involvement, what prompted me to get involved in politics was a visit to Bangladesh in the early 80s. But separate to that, it was that significant event, looking at the world from a different perspective, that made me think about how can we organise things that are going to be sustainable for such a huge world, global population, and to ensure some form of equity and social justice in the world. And I started to investigate different political party views and policies, and I found the only political parties, policies and manifesto that made sense to me was the Green Party. And that was for three main reasons. The first reason is that green politics are based on a set of values, and those values don't change. Even though some of the policies might be developed and we might have new responses to things, the underpinning values of the Green Party are what makes it make sense and what makes it a comfortable place and the only right place to be, because those values are about recognising that this planet that we all live on is a living organism, that we only have the one planet, that you can't expect to rip things out of it and dump rubbish into it without ultimately destroying and ruining the thing that you're actually dependent on for life. But within that, it's about saying actually the whole system is crazy, because what we have at the moment is an industrial economic system that is totally anathema to protecting the planet, because it's all about exponential growth. And every single other party hasn't really got their heads around the fact that when they're making promises, endless promises of things, each of those promises, however to tempt the voters, is still ultimately dependent on non-stop exponential industrial growth and ripping this planet to pieces. And the Greens actually understand that and have been developing policies over 30, 40 years now to ensure that there is a vision, there is a way we could organise society to make sure that that we're most dependent on we will protect for our children and our future generations. So there's the stuff about the planet. The second underpinning value is one of social justice, and the Greens really get that, because it's not just about jobs and equality and everybody being entitled to work in a full-time job. It's about really understanding that we need to say all work is valuable, and all those things that at the moment aren't currently valued will be valued within a green society. So looking after other people, looking after ourselves, educating our children in groups of more than one adult to 30 children, looking after children in our nurseries or at a young age, giving mothers the right and fathers the right to stay at home and have an income. So things like the basic income scheme, a much shorter working week, but basically just acknowledging that life isn't all about paid work in order to get on that treadmill to be able to buy the stuff that's generated by a system that we know the planet cannot sustain anyway. And the last thing, well, I wasn't expecting to say this much, but the last value, I think, of the Green Party is also it really does get democracy and participation and empowering people and community, all those things. It's not about top-down politics, it's not about imposing any idea on people, and it's about saying that we all have to find our own power and take responsibility and join in and be part of our community. And that community will look after people who are more vulnerable or less able, but that actually everybody has a role, and it's about participation. So that's the end of my personal bit today about the Greens and the Green Party and why I'm here, why I ended up as a Green councillor. That was more about being in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. But anyway, in my role as a councillor, I never expected to actually have to be taking part in direct protest. In fact, I got into standing for election because this isn't what I find comfortable. Strange to say, I actually find council meetings easier than here. Well, I used to, until I did it. And what I discovered is actually, we've actually exploited every single democratic route so far to knock this industry out, and it just hasn't worked because the government is clearly in cahoots with this industry to foist it upon us. And so as a councillor I realised, well, that democratic process at local government has been ignored and usurped, and so I have to do something else. And so I'm really, really proud to say that I did get involved in direct action, and I have met such amazing, wonderful people in that process. It's actually positively heartwarming. I mean, it's almost worth saying all those friendships and all that resilience and that spirit that I'd have never seen and I'd never known existed in myself had this fracking industry not rolled up. So, huge thanks to all of you for being part of that. Coming along today, coming along week after week. Now, there are some people here, and I won't mention names, I've been here from the very beginning and I've been here almost every single day for 16 months. Miranda Cox, who's a local resident and a councillor on Kirkham Town Council, is going to say a few words from a local people's perspective. But I just wanted to say we're also really, really delighted to have Nick Dearden here today and Amelia Womack. So don't go anywhere, because we are going to be speaking for a little, got things to tell you, and we want you to stay around to hear what everyone's got to say. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you all very much. Over to you, Miranda.
Full start to this week. Really want to say thank you to the Green Party, locally, regionally and nationally, for consistently supporting this campaign. Without you, I think we would not get as much media attention as we deserve, really. This campaign needs to have its voice heard. I do live very local to this site, and I do have a role within council, although when I'm here, I am here as a resident and a very concerned resident. My role within council, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. We've never really had to encounter anything like this before on the Fylde. It's quite an unusual set of circumstances that we find ourselves in. Like Gina, I've gone on a long journey as part of this campaign and done things that I didn't think I'd be capable of doing. But it's also changed my world perspective, if I'm perfectly honest. It shook me up from thinking that we lived in a pretty idyllic place to actually looking and recognising the corruption, the inherent insidiousness of the fossil fuel industry, and this constant desire to take from the land, to take from us as people. This is all tied in with democracy, or lack of, or the charade of what we thought was democracy. And the more you look at it and the more you're involved in this campaign, the more you realise that actually what we've always held to be true isn't true. That we are here on this planet and we are taking and taking and taking, and we're being encouraged to do so, and we ourselves are being exploited by those people, those few people at the top who are taking, making money and not actually considering the sustainability of our world. And we're talking locally, the local sustainability, but we're also talking globally. And we're at a stage now where I'm seriously concerned what legacy we are leaving, if anything, for our future generations. And it's inherent upon us now. We owe it. I think we're all here because we know we owe it to our future generations. And we will not go away. We've been here in all weathers. It just happens to be absolutely fantastic at the moment, which is brilliant. But obviously, we've been here in all weathers, and we will not be going anywhere fast. We will not back down on this, despite what they throw at us legally or in a civil courts. We know that we have to. We are duty bound to stay here and to do what we need to do to basically raise awareness of this industry in particular, but the bigger issues. And for me, the biggest journey I've been on has not just been about the environment, it has been about the political system. It's been about how the mechanisms of the system work. One of my roles as a councillor is I get to spend 2 hours a month with representatives from Quadrilla. And along with other councillors, we are on a community liaison group. Now that group has to, or is meant to be, about information sharing, about us raising concerns from our constituents, but also about us finding out information and meeting with regulators and questioning and finding out what's actually happening. And I was in a meeting for the last 15 months. We've been asking for sight of an emergency plan, and we've always been met with evasion and the fact that there isn't actually regulation to ensure that an emergency plan is actually required for this site, that it's not site specific, they're working on a generic plan. And the more you think about that, in the light of a few really, really tragic disasters that have occurred, it is actually terrifying. And we've asked numerous occasions for sight of this. We're still being denied sight of it. Now, either this plan doesn't exist or it's being kept secret. And they're hiding behind things like counter-terrorism legislation, which is ridiculous because, you know, we're people just trying to protect our world. We're not terrorists. So I find that really deeply offensive. But also, when you ask questions, you're accused of being alarmist. You're accused of planting an Armageddon scenario in people's heads. What they're failing to understand is that people's concerns are very, very real. And while they refuse to acknowledge those concerns are real, they are doubly slapping us in the face as a community. They are coming in without social licence. The government has ridden roughshod over our democratic process, and now they haven't even got the courtesy to actually let us know and talk to us about what is required should there be a disaster. Now, I don't want to be alarmist. I'm not naturally an alarmist person. But on this instance, I feel duty bound to actually say this is not good enough. This is really not good enough. We're about to go to the frack stage. Anyway, I want to say thank you very much for everyone for being here and your continued support. I'll be here as long as it takes, and I know you guys will too. So thank you very much. I'm going to shut up speaking now. Just look forward to seeing you all in the future.
Thanks so much. Thanks for inviting me. Really, the privilege is all mine to be here today. I have been following this struggle over the last 18 months, and I think this is one of the most, if not the most, important battles going on in Britain today. You've created something which has national significance, and indeed international significance. And I think the fact of the injunction, the fact of the way that the government is treating and talking about the protesters here is just proof of the difference that you are making. And despite all of the setbacks, and you've had many setbacks, you're going to have more setbacks, never ever ever give up in this struggle, because it's giving hope and energy and inspiration to all of us across the country, and indeed to many people we work with across the world. So I want to say a huge thank you for all that you're doing. As I see it, you're part of a struggle which is trying to put human beings, human need, and the protection of the environment, which is of course a human need, ahead of the relentless push to turn more and more of our planet into a playground for big corporations, big business, and the super rich. And that's why we're an organisation, Global Justice Now, that we see very much as being part of that same struggle. And so today I want to bring solidarity, support, and respect to you from my organisation. Over the last 30 or 40 years, increasingly, we have been forced to live in a world which has put greed, the desire to make short-term profits, whatever the cost, ahead of any kind of human right, any kind of environmental consideration, any kind of human happiness. So it doesn't matter for the political system today that the carbon emissions that will be created by fracking will actually take our planet one step further to the brink of collapse. It doesn't matter that those who are going to suffer the most are the poorest people living in the poorest countries in the world, those who've had the least to do with creating these problems. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is there is money to be made here. There is short-term profit to be made here, and that is the most important thing as far as the political system we currently live in is concerned. And the same thing is happening not just when it comes to environmental considerations, but when it comes to our healthcare or our education. You know, the same thing, the rules of the market, the rules of money are being put ahead of our needs as human beings and the needs of future generations. And that has to stop, and it's got to stop quickly, because the world is in a deep crisis, an environmental crisis, yes, but also a deep crisis of inequality that's driving really frightening political developments now in the world. And it's not surprising, is it? It's not surprising that if the 8 richest men in the world have the same amount of wealth as the poorest half of the world, 3.5 billion people, it's not surprising if that inequality is driving some really frightening political developments. And that's why we've all got to join with you in what you're doing here, to do whatever we can to try and change it and try and create a better future for the children and grandchildren that many of you will have and will be here representing in many ways. So thank you for what you're doing. I want to talk a little bit about how it relates to something we're working on, which is trade deals. Now, we're constantly told by our political leaders trade deals are a wonderful thing and there is no problem in the world that signing a trade deal cannot sort out. And unfortunately, that is just not the case. Trade deals certainly are good for some parts of society, for some people, but trade deals also have many losers, and I would argue the environment is one of the biggest losers of the types of trade deals that we've been signing over the last 20 or 30 years. Do people know about TTIP? I'm guessing most of you know about TTIP. Okay, so for those who don't, it was a massive trade deal proposed between the European Union and the United States. But it was a trade deal really that I would argue didn't represent the best interests of people on either continent, either in Europe or in the United States, and certainly not in the best interests of our environment or animal welfare. So we were part of mobilizing people to stop this awful trade deal. And just so, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this already, but for any who isn't, trade deals these days encompass huge amounts of public policy. So it's not just about lowering tariffs, which is what a lot of people think trade deals are. Well, we'll lower tariffs, we'll get cheaper goods in, everyone will be better off. It's really not the case. For most modern trade deals, tariffs are a very, very small part of the equation. Actually, what they're about is changing the rules of the global economy. And unfortunately, changing the rules of the global economy so it works even more in favour of big business, of big capital, and even less in favour of ordinary people like ourselves. So with TTIP, one of the things that a lot of people were very worried about was chlorine chicken. I don't know if you've heard of chlorine chickens. In America, they have very different food standards. They tend to factory farm animals far more aggressively than we do in Europe. And for the people that are creating this meat, that are producing this meat, and often it's, you know, cows and poultry, who never see the light of day, who are stuffed with antibiotics and hormones and all the rest of it, and at the end of their lives they're washed in chlorine to get rid of all the crap and disease, frankly, that they've been forced to live in. But the producers of this meat want to export it into the European Union. At the moment we say you're not allowed to do that. So TTIP was about trying to standardise or harmonise the kind of protections that we have on things like food. And for American agribusiness, it was really clear what that standardising meant. It meant lowering or stripping away the standards and protections that we've put in place in Europe, because that's how we want to farm our animals. That's the kind of animal welfare standards we want. Of course, they could be much better. And that's the kind of food that we want to eat. But from the perspective of American agribusiness, it was just another trade barrier. It was, you're protectionist, you're preventing us getting our food into European markets. And chlorine chicken was just one example. Right across the board, TTIP touched upon all manner of public policies and environmental policies. And right at the heart of it was this thing called the investor-state dispute settlement system. We call it a corporate court, because it allows big business and the super rich from the other side of the trade deal, so American big business in this case, to, if the British government does anything which those businesses don't like, they have a special legal process to go through, special tribunals overseen by corporate lawyers who will say, actually, that law that you've made, doesn't matter how democratically you've made it, essentially it stops us from making the profits we want to make in your country, and therefore we are going to sue you to claim compensation. And particularly relevant to the campaign that we're all involved in here, And this has been used right around the world to strip away environmental protections or claim compensation for governments that try and protect the environment. And the state of Quebec, which put a moratorium on fracking because they wanted to properly investigate the impact of fracking on people and the environment, was taken to one of these corporate courts by an American multinational corporation who said, no, moratorium on fracking, we want to make money from fracking. You're taking away our right to profit. You're taking away our right to make money. And it found in favour of the multinational corporation. And in fact, Canada has had dozens of cases taken against it by US multinationals simply for trying to stop mines, to stop fracking, to stop toxins being included in petrol. Time and time again, American multinationals have used this special court system that's not open to you and me. It's not open to us if we feel our rights are being abused by what Quadrilla's doing behind us. We're not allowed to do that. It's about multinationals taking cases against people, taking cases against government when they work in the public interest. It's an absolute scandal in any democratic society that these things should exist. And the government, even if they win, has to pay out tens of millions of pounds to the company just in legal costs and so on, even if they win. And if the government loses, there's no right of appeal. So there is no natural justice in this system whatsoever. And it's under this system that Australia has been taken to a corporate court simply for putting cigarettes in plain packaging. Uruguay has been taken to a corporate court just for putting health warnings on cigarettes. Egypt's been taken to a corporate court for trying to raise the minimum wage of public sector workers. That was Veolia that took that case, one of the companies that often runs council services in this country. These things are a scandal, and they would have been right at the centre of TTIP. And I think that was the one thing that really got people angry, really got people enraged, and quite right too. And so over 2 years, we waged a campaign against TTIP right across Europe and the United States. 3.5 million people in a year signed an official petition saying we don't want anything to do with this treaty. And local councils right across Europe and the United States passed resolutions declaring themselves TTIP-free zones. And that had a real effect. In fact, the negotiators of TTIP would go around the world, go around America and Europe trying to negotiate, and they couldn't negotiate in a city that hadn't declared itself a TTIP-free zone by the end. They went to Brussels, they went to Washington, they were TTIP-free zones. They thought, we'll do something a bit different. We'll go to Miami. 2 weeks beforehand, Miami declared itself a TTIP-free zone. So it became a real embarrassment. And eventually, just over a year ago, it was declared dead, effectively, off the table. So this is a real example of people power. Never let anybody tell you that we can't make a difference, because we have made a difference. We put an end to this awful trade deal, and we can put an end to fracking in the UK as well. We've got a lot more on our plate now, of course, because we've got a Trade Secretary, Liam Fox, who's flying around the world, running up extraordinary numbers of air miles, talking to any country who'll talk to him about trade deals. He's talking to Trump's America. And there's no question, if after Brexit Britain does a trade deal with the United States, it will include chlorine chicken, it will include corporate courts, it will be a threat to our NHS. So we've got to stop it. But he's also talking to all manner of governments around the world who are known for the most awful human rights abuses, from Saudi Arabia to Turkey to the Philippines, telling them, do a trade deal with us, it'll be good for you and it'll be good for us. We share all these values in common, and it's just a disgrace. It won't only be bad for us, it will be bad for the people in those countries who are trying to fight for democracy and trying to fight for their rights. So we've got to oppose him every step of the way. And unfortunately, at the moment, our members of Parliament can't even stop a trade deal if Liam Fox decides to sign it and seal it and bring it back to Parliament. They are unable to stop that trade deal. So the first thing we're calling for is democracy over trade deals. We should have these things are so enormous, we should all have a say in the type of trade deals we want to do and who we do them with. And most importantly, of course, our MPs should be able to amend them and stop them and hold somebody like Liam Fox to account. So we're going to be working on that over the next few weeks. If you get any time out, have a look on the website and take an action and tell your MP to vote for amendments to the trade bill, which is currently going through. I see this as all part of the same struggle as the one that you're fighting for here today. It's for a world that we would be happy for our children and grandchildren to live in. Proper democratic societies where human rights are held up above the right to make corporate profit. And I just want to finish by saying, you know, you're in a really long and important history. Really, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, because it was I'm from this part of the country originally. I know I don't sound like it now, but I'm from the Northwest, and I was always really proud, looking back at the history of the Northwest, where the trade union movements were formed to fight for ordinary people's rights in the satanic mills that Blake talked about, set up around Lancashire, and particularly the incredible solidarity that was shown by the mill workers, the cotton mill workers, in the middle of the 19th century when the American Civil War was raging, and they were dependent for their livelihoods on the cotton that was coming out of the South that was produced by slaves. But nonetheless, they said, we don't care about that, we will sacrifice that in order to stand for the end of slavery. They sacrificed their own livelihoods so that they could stand up for what was right in the world, and that was phenomenal. President Lincoln wrote them a special letter saying how appreciated their solidarity was. And I think, you know, when you look back in history and you look at the things that people have sacrificed so we can live like we do today, it makes everything seem more reasonable, seem more possible. And I see you as very, very much standing in that tradition. So huge solidarity and respect to you today for all you're doing. Please keep it up. Please don't give up, and together we will win.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Nick. And I think that that's always something to keep sight of, is how we're part of a wider movement and how our small parts paint a much bigger picture. And as always, I think this is my third or fourth time here, and it's always such a pleasure to be here. And especially as we're just coming up to the fact that they're saying that Cuadrilla are officially going to be starting fracking on this site in the next few months. But I mean, they've said that before. And why haven't they? Because of you and the resistance that you've put up for months upon months, coming up to years, and the fact that we've been stood here on their doorstep saying no to Cuadrilla, saying no to fracking, and making sure that there's a very clear voice from the community. And it's because of people like you, because of activists, that I think that we really have a hope that this won't happen. I think that we've been smart, the way that we've protested, hitting them where it hurts, making sure that the finances aren't viable for a company like this to continue here in Lancashire, and still continue on that frustration that effectively taxpayers are subsidising this in many ways, including the police being here to help us help our peaceful protest, but our taxpayers' money going into their salaries when effectively they shouldn't be here with because this company shouldn't be here. Because fracking is dangerous. It releases methane gas that goes into the atmosphere, causes climate change, and if we're going to hit the levels that we want for the Paris Agreement, we simply cannot have fracking in our mix. We can tell that this government has not got the future and future generations at the top of its priorities from a number of deals that it's currently doing. It's not just about fracking. Even this week in Wales, we had the agreement that apparently they're going to Westminster's telling the Welsh Assembly that they can't have the tidal lagoon in Swansea, which was part of a plan to make sure that Wales could be fossil free by 2050, well, probably before that, before around 2030. But it was an opportunity to have a new technology in South Wales that would bring new jobs, that would make us world leaders in a technology, and potentially by developing that in areas like Cardiff, Newport and up in Colwyn Bay, make sure that all of our energy in Wales was tidal. The government said that we had to stop those plans, overriding the Welsh Assembly, and on top of that said that instead they were going to open up the new nuclear power plant up in Wilfer on Anglesey. This government talks about it being a green government, and we've all seen Michael Gove wandering around with his keep cup,
and encouraging the Cabinet to do the same. But with projects like this, we know that the government is trying to deceive us and have no clue about how we protect the environment for future generations. Things like fracking, it's not even the future generations, it's going to pollute our water supply. And in Montana, in North Dakota, people have even said that as a result of fracking in their area, when they switch on the taps, they're on fire as a result of the methane that comes through. It's noisy. I was hoping that it was going to be a perfect buzz coming through then, as it has done there. Very well. It carves up our landscape, it causes earthquakes, and the list goes on as to why it's a major threat to human health. 73% of the chemicals used in the process can affect skin, eyes and sensory organs, and 40 to 50% can affect the brain and nervous system. Despite our efforts to try and reduce carbon emitting gases, despite our efforts to try and make sure we protect the planet for future generations, this government is continuing on all of these plans, and I'm going to include their sites on HS2 that will also carve up the countryside as being an act against the environment, and then on top of that, the extra runway at Heathrow being once again proving that this government has no commitment to climate targets or ensuring that we protect this planet. So when people call us the Green government and tell the Green Party that we should be scared about them stealing votes, then actually I'm not scared, because I understand that they simply do not understand what the environment is, how to protect the environment, and we have to remember that whatever warm words Michael Gove says about the environment, when he was Education Minister, he tried to have climate change taken off the curriculum. That is not a man who's interested in being green. That is a man who's interested in his own benefits. We need to be investing in clean energy. I mean, the different things that we can be doing if we started to invest in green energy at the same time that even Quadrilla started to invest here, where would we be now in terms of our clean energy targets and the amount of energy that we would be producing here in the UK to make sure that we met the demands of the Paris Agreement? Where would we be even if there was research and development that had gone into the research and development by this organisation into fracking, if that had gone into renewables, and making sure that we are investing in the technologies that are future-proof, because we've got to acknowledge that fossil fuels are the energy of the past, and we need to be building for their energy of the future. Actually, when I did the video for you about Green Week, I was on a train between Cardiff and Newport, and when I said about being anti-fracking as I finished the film, and I wish we'd still been recording because there was a cheer that erupted down the train, and it was interesting because people were saying people in Wales know that these are bad jobs. We live with the effects of coal mining, we live with the effects of people who've been forced into jobs, that our generations are still living with the effects in their community. If in some of the rivers that link up Swansea, for example, if the water breaks into an old mine, that river will be polluted for days as it flushes out all of the different chemicals in that mine, and people's are still losing family members as a result of the air pollution that it's being caused. And it was really empowering to hear the people saying, we know that these are bad jobs, we will not be deceived by people saying it can bring jobs to the UK. We know that this isn't where we should be putting our money for the future, and they didn't want to see other communities have the impact as a result of a government's failure to actually address the social and environmental effects of a fuel that's of the past when we could be building for the fuels of the future. So I want to thank everyone who's here today. Thank everyone who has come for all of these. I mean, I've been hearing so many incredible stories from all of you, whether that's about your 21-hour lock-ons or doing dancing with Emma Thompson. It's been incredible to see what you've achieved over all of these, over the last 18 months, and what you'll continue to achieve, because when I was asked by the BBC, I was interviewed by the BBC, they asked me, is this inevitable? No, it's not inevitable. You've proved that for all of this time. You've proved it's not inevitable. You've proved that we can resist this. You've proved that we can stop this. I want to thank all of you for being here today. Everyone who's been here this whole time, making sure that the resistance is here on Quadrilla's doorstep, and making sure that we protect our environment and make sure that this government doesn't allow its ideology to push something that this community simply doesn't want onto the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amelia. It's always so good to have you here.